Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. There are three entities that have had, or more, that have had a profound effect on the war in Syria, and the behavior of them demonstrates that the war in Syria is a shell of an oil war, and that it has nothing to do with the rights of the people or a better country, a better infrastructure of the country. That it's entirely just a bunch of international monopolists that have somehow in this world become like so unregulated and completely lawless towards the welfare of the humanity, that they have that they are like, how do you say, trying to legitimize like the most profoundly aggressive and malicious kinds of behaviors. It's malicious behaviors that they are trying to legitimize. So, there's several entities here. The first entity is Gennedy Tymoshenko, who is a Russian man, an old Russian man. He, in the 1990s, became close to Russian Vladimir Putin, and they are oil traders. They are trading oil in St. Petersburg. He had engineering and construction companies. Their gas or oil company that they controlled was named Soytransgaz, and they had several pipelines for Russian oil and gas. So this guy Gennady Tymoshenko, along with his friend Vladimir Putin, back in 1990 decided to grab up all of Russia's oil as if it was their own, and to create pipelines and to extend an oil empire. So they built several pipelines, including Nord Stream 2. Or, I'm sorry, Nord Stream. The Nord Stream pipeline, which supplies gas from Russia throughout Europe and ends in Germany, or especially extends to Germany. That's the Nord Stream pipeline. And that was one that he built. They've built these in the past 30 years. These are 30-year-old pipelines. He was awarded contracts to build part of a gas pipeline from Egypt and 2 large gas processing plants. The Russian intervention helped the fate of the Revolutionary War. So the Russians were instrumental in protecting the dictatorship of Assad, and subsequently 2 more companies associated with his company business, Soytransgaz, gained a foothold in the phosphate sector. So Syria is one of their major exports. They're basically, the country's revenue is coming out of gas and phosphate for Syria. And now recently, I mean, they did have a strong pharmaceutical industry in Syria previously, but it has obviously expanded into like an international multi-billion-dollar industry of Captagon trade, which it can only be a result of having sold it in multiple countries. In order to generate billions of dollars a year, you must sell it in multiple countries, and you must get like thousands of people to distribute it. So it has to be just like this intensive. I mean, the number one way to do that would just be to plug it into the healthcare system, to have it as prescribed. So Soytransgaz, which is, this guy Gennedy Tymoshenko's business, they started grabbing up the phosphate sector in Syria. Obviously, it was a collateral in exchange for the Russian protection. They were given a share of the Syria's phosphate sector property. And then they started changing their names, I guess, Soytransgaz Engineering. And then they tried to like sell it off and change names over some nonsense. In 2018, they sold the Soytransgaz Engineering to 2 Moscow companies without any signs of real business, Photon Express and Enira Antares. And then the next year, after having sold off this business to different names, they won 3 contracts for Syria. They changed their name and got themselves 3 contracts to mine Syria. They took over the Syrian state-owned fertilizer plants on the outskirts of Homs and Tartus. And those are Syria's biggest phosphate mines. So, then there was like, news and rumors that of the people in Russia associated who were basically admitting that this deal was to offset the costs of the military operation in Syria through mining on exclusive terms. So they will come and help the dictator Assad stay in power on the condition that they would get to mine Syria, that they would take control, that they would come into ownership of property, of Syrian property, and mine it on their own terms. Property that was formerly the Syrian state property. The Syrian state sold his property to these Russian diplomats. And another company, Soytransgaz Logistics, got a 50-year contract on that same year. 2018 is when these deals went down. And it gave them the right to 70% of Palmyra's phosphate deposit. That is Syria's largest phosphate deposit. And remember, this is one of the top 3 industry trades of Syria. One of their, billion-dollar revenues a year. Phosphate, the biggest phosphate deposit in Syria near Palmyra, they were given 70% of the proceeds to the phosphate mines in 2018. This guy, Gennedy Tymoshenko, some friend, some oil trader from the 1990s. So, we got to continue with these other very important actors in this oil worldwide oil monopoly. 2009, Syria's phosphate exports amounted to more than 3.2 million tons to the world markets, which made Syria occupy an advanced position in the world among phosphate exporting countries. Syria was ranked number 5 on the list of phosphate exporting countries in the world in 2011. Before the revolution, right when the revolution started, Syria was number 5 in phosphate exports. That's a tremendous revenues from natural resources. And they were in the top 5 ranking with India, Russia, Lebanon, Romania, and Greece. So the Conquest mines are located 60 kilometers southwest of Palmyra and are among the largest phosphate mines in Syria, in addition to Sharkia mines, which are located 45 kilometers southwest of Palmyra. The 2 mines are considered the main ones in the extraction of phosphates for Syria. That gets Syria number 5 in the world, those mines do. Or in 2011 they did, before the country was basically locked down, in a war lockdown. So, the production density of the 2 mines in 2009 had reached 2,600,000 tons. That was 2 million tons from the Sharkia A and B mines and 800,000 tons from the Conquest. If I say it wrong, I'm sorry. 2017. This is 2017, 1 year before the 2018 deals, where Putin and his buddies basically take control of Syria's natural resources, of the phosphate mines and the oils, because there are oil contracts as well. So 1 year before this happened, an Iranian delegation headed by Deputy Minister of Economy and Finance Farhad Zarkar visited Damascus and met with Khamis, and they discussed a mechanism to repay the Iranians for all of the debts granted to the Syrian regime and all the lines of credit that the Syrian regime in Damascus had requested of Iran. They discussed how to pay back, because Damascus lost control of Syria to the Free Syrian Army. The Free Syrian Army was basically just a spearhead of an American operation. And the Free Syrian Army took all of the territory. Then Islamic State, which was a rogue command structure, came in and paid everybody to be in their army, and then took control of those cities away from the Free Syrian Army. And then, because it was grabbed out of the hands of the revolution and it had gone to this rogue command structure of the Islamic State, that gave it gave some sort of legal legitimacy for America to come in there with drones and to deny all international prisoner of war laws, all international laws of war, and to just use drones and completely deny any kind of judicial system to the war. And then they're trying to, this false legitimization of in that act is how they were able to partition the country and to maintain the controls system that they have now. The control system they have right now is a partition. They took some kind of legitimacy in controlling those Al Omar oil fields and in the Deir ez-Zor provinces from the Americans are taking this legitimacy. Obviously, they've created some kind of deal, and all of this is based on to the continued recognition of sovereignty in Damascus. Because if there was no sovereignty in Damascus, he would have no right of saying that this property way 10 hours drive from me, that I had the right to grant it to a foreign power. So the Iranians sent in Hezbollah, and Hezbollah bared the cost, and Hezbollah took the territory. And then a couple years later, in 2017, after Hezbollah had finished the work and took the territory away from the people, then the Iranians came in and said that in exchange for our protection, now we want a repayment, and the repayment is the two parties agreed to pay off debts by giving Iran the Syrian phosphates, and they established a joint company, a joint business for that purpose, which would supervise the extraction and export, the production to Tehran. In 2017, Syria signed over to Iran the right to operate phosphate mines in Sharkia, 50 kilometers south of the ancient city of Palmyra, and their Canafis mine, also under the Iranian contract. So that would mean that the mines for phosphates of Syria, which had given her in 2009, 2011, the rank of 5. Little Syria is number 5 in the world, and those now belong to a company, a joint company, Iranian-Syrian phosphate company. According to the international report, the experts go to Tehran in 2017. Yeah, they've signed over those under the Canafis mine under the Iranian contract is a preferred site of extraction because it is rich in uranium. The Iran's Atomic Energy Agency requested 800,000 tons of phosphate, a rock from which uranium can be extracted, must be imported from Syria, and that the government should cover the cost of the export for it to be imported to Tehran. In order to supply part of the uranium needed for Iran's nuclear industry, they are making this project to extract uranium from Syria's phosphate mines. And due to the high grade of uranium phosphate soil in those mines in Syria, the extraction of the element and the preparation for yellow cake is technically more feasible than the extraction of that low-grade uranium in the radioactive mines of Iran. And the Iranian's president's office asked senior government officials for the annual purchase of phosphates from Syria to the nuclear agency of Iran. So in 2018, the General Company for Phosphates and Mines exported 247 tons of phosphate, and that would be to the equivalent of about 7 billion Syrian pounds is how much they are worth. And they go through the Directorate of Phosphate Loading and Storage in Tartus. And this Al Watan newspaper quoted the general manager of the company Ghassan Khalil, saying that they also marketed 144,000 tons of phosphate to the general fertilizer company in Homs at a value of about 3.5 billion Syrian pounds in 1 year, bringing the total phosphate sales to 600,000 tons at a value of 11 billion Syrian pounds in 1 year. The phosphate company produced 1.7 million tons of wet compound phosphate through the phosphate mines of Sharkia and Cuneifius in the eastern countryside of Homs in the first 10 days of the month. And they implemented investment projects during the year to bring the total value to 105 million pounds, with financial implementation rates of 70%, and doing studies in order to raise the production capacity of phosphate to reach 10 million tons annually, and trying to increase its supply to the global markets. And the People's Assembly approved contracts between the General Organization for Geology and Mineral Resources and the Russian Soytransgaz to extract phosphates from the eastern mines for a production of 2.2 million tons annually. And just continues what we already discussed, that they're transporting it out of Homs and Tartus. They go through Palmyra out to Homs and out to Tartus. And then, of course, any uranium was supposed to go to Tehran. So, now to the gas. That is phosphate. Now to the gas. In December of 2019, the Syrian parliament passed laws on concluding agreements with 2 Russian companies to develop 3 blocks of gas and oil fields. The total area is 12,000 square kilometers of gas reserves of Syrian, and 750 billion cubic meters. There are serious contracts given to oil companies Velalda and Mercury. And this was all approved with the Parliament of the Syrian Arab Republic in December of 2019. And then they had draft laws of contracts for oil and gas exploration and production for those 2 companies approved. They were Russian oil companies. Velalda receives Block 23. These are in the oceanic basins in the Mediterranean Sea off the coast of Syria. So all of these are ocean drilling gas blocks of Russian. And the Mercury Company received Gas Block 7 and Gas Block 19. And the Syrian Minister of Oil and Gas, Ali Ghanem, explained that the Block 23 is 2,000 square kilometers north of Damascus, and Block 7 is an oil field with an area of 10,000 square kilometers on the bank left side of the Euphrates River. So that's actually inland on the Euphrates River. And then it continues, there was some changing of the leadership of these companies, or that it would be sold off and that the names would be changed, and the companies would change ownership or change names, and that ultimately those 2 gas companies 100% are a window companies. They're just fake companies belonging to the empire of Prigozhin. Wagner's leader, Prigozhin, is secretly has the ownership of these gas blocks. And if you watch any Wagner documentaries, you'll hear that the Wagner group, which I'll read this part next, was specifically designated as a military group that would protect Russian oil, that could be dispatched to any war that Russia deems needed, and that they would be like a satellite security force, and that the price or the payment for that work is that they take ownership, that he has ownership of these gas companies. So these Syrian companies that have the gas contracts for billions of dollars of Syrian oil, they're the Wagner guys. It's his property in Syria. So it just continues there of the relationship of the companies and how he's hiding behind the companies, and that the news media are tracking the companies to try to uncover who is the owner of these companies, and it's all revealed that the Wagner group has been employed to take over gas fields in exchange for a percentage of they are conquerors, and they are also war criminals who are obviously they are they have degenerated, they have cognitively, they are not functioning, they are not capable of operating in a lawful society. They are not capable, and that they cannot be that they are non-peaceful, and they are not they are malicious entities that cannot coexist with lawful and peaceful societies. So a handful of world superpowers have partitioned the country of Syria and declared a ceasefire among themselves, while simultaneously, overseas, they are at war with each other. This is a complete nightmare for everyone in the world. All of these wars have been oil wars. The United States is the #1 oil and gas producer in the world. Russia is attempting to have a world monopoly of gas and oil, and this comes in direct competition with the United States. They are fighting over who controls the world markets for gas and oil. We have the top 5 oil producing superpowers of the world directly involved with the Syrian revolution. The United States and Russia are the top 2 oil and gas producers in the world. Iran is a top 5 world oil and gas producer. Qatar is entirely a gas can with a straw. He is a country by name only. Turkey is a coal mine with 2 pipelines that run through it. These are billion-dollar-a-year revenue streams. These revenues are competitors of governments anywhere, and this has been known for thousands of years. Monopolies compete with law and order and governments. Monopolies compete with the will of the people. These revenues buy governments. They buy the whole government. They buy them. This is 5 world oil and gas powers against a Syrian revolution. We now know, because of the partitioning and the ceasefire, that these governments are each here for the oil and gas. They will negotiate only in terms of competing for the world oil and gas. You will find they are enslaved by their desire to have this monopoly of the world oil and gas markets. The world's superpowers are battling for control of the world's oil and gas because they think that these monopoly of these energy revenues are the keys to power. And they think that because it's been happening, because they've gotten it already. The United States have shown us that they will do anything to stay in Syria. If they want to know where to find the Captagon, it would be located at the Aleppo International Airport and the Damascus International Airport. It generates Damascus $50 billion every year. The only possibility for Damascus to put on market that much merchandise in 1 year is if he had a very big international pharmacy. That's as much money as Pablo Escobar made in his entire career. Assad made that much money in 1 year. The empire of Damascus completely depends on a drug recipe for his survival and a fake sovereignty and some bad friends. They wanted us to believe that they're making $50 billion every year by selling Captagon at parties. If you want to make $50 billion, you need an international pharmacy. If the United States wanted to stop the Captagon, they know it's at the airports. The drug recipes and the flammable liquids are making these men super powerful and capable of controlling governments. My people of the revolution and the beloved mujahideen of Syria, there was a choice about the destiny of Syria. The revolution gives us the option to change the government of the country, or that we will make a new and independent government of the country that is beholden of the sovereignty of the people of the land. International actors have been controlling all of the country and our commanders of the revolution via starvation, siege, strategies of closing the borders and prohibiting travel. This is choking the life for Syria. Starvation and stopping economic life. That is 100% a war strategy. The name of that act is starvation by siege. They stop the economy of the city. All of the life around that flows to the north of Syria is being cut off by using weapons to stop anyone at the borders. Syria is the heart of the Mediterranean Sea, and it's an intersection of world commerce. It's no coincidence that Syria has come under siege by international competitors, and that they refused to recognize the people of the country in the north with all of their due rights as provided via our humanity and put in international law. While they recognize the right of the sovereignty of Damascus, the dictatorship, which is illegitimate. We must make the international actors remember that Damascus will never control us again. If you will not open the borders for international flight and freedom of the right to travel and return home to your country. The governments of neighbor countries and international powers did not recognize our right to be an independent government with all due rights to our people. We must make them believe that they cannot withhold them from us anymore. The army of the revolution will never wage war on Damascus because foreign governments have forbidden it. Foreign governments have closed the road to Damascus that you cannot attack him and have protected his sovereignty, which is illegitimate. We must make these superpowers feel that they must go to Damascus and finish this task. There must come a day when the mighty American army says, I must go to Damascus and finish the dictatorship of the Assads in Syria. Information wars have been used to suppress the borders and withhold all of the rights of the people. And therefore, information wars can open those borders as well. Information wars can get our revolution the rights due to them and return their rights. They have said, we are terrorists, in order to convince everyone, and even ourselves, that we don't deserve human rights and to withhold our right to surrender. Our grandfathers never had a communication platform for a revolution that we do. We have it. We have powerful tools that have made the victory for dictatorships impossible. They are aware the power of our communications imperil the survival of dictators anywhere. This is 2023, and dictators belong in the history, in the past. The only reason why Assad has power at this time is money, and an American government who is uninterested in engaging Russian warplanes over the sky of Damascus. The Russian government is unable to suppress an American military over Syrian skies because they are engaged in Ukraine, and America is not engaged. Russia has expended military resources, and America has not. It's clear America has an ability for victory in Damascus. They say that they cannot open the borders for security reasons, but the Kurdish now have oil fields, and they're sitting happily on lakes of oil money, and they haven't done terrorist attacks in Turkey since they've had the oil. They say they cannot open an international airport in Idlib because Jolani will hijack the airplanes and use them to attack the West. First of all, Osama bin Laden didn't have 3 million displaced civilians in tents at his city limits, who his own armies are protecting. So these men are not the same. We, the people, must be freed from the burdens of the wrongdoings of the government and world powers. Russia tried to clean his hands of blood using the Wagner Group. And now the Wagner Group has been sacrificed in battles of Ukraine, and a great disdain was showed to them when they rejected that bait. Clearly, Russia wants to clean themselves of the Wagner Group and disconnect themselves of wrongdoing. Of course they do. They feel the pressure of the people rising on them in Russia and Ukraine. And now Russia must feel the pressure rising against him in Syria. The international powers have left Syria only one choice, and that is to stop the recognition of Damascus as sovereign. If the sovereignty of Syria is located in Damascus, then Damascus must be freed. If there is one Syria, then the government must succumb to the revolution. The revolution continues until victory, freedom, and justice. Allahu Akbar. That's written by Catherine Anita Alwan in July of 2023.